So happy eclipse. It's still going on. It was exact on 10 around 10:30, about a half an hour ago. So this is a really powerful eclipse portal. So we had the new moon, and then and now we have the full moon, and that span of 2 weeks time is a little bit of a download, as I talked about in the podcast. And it's not like it's over. It's like it's let me still admit some people. It's not like it's that the download is over. It's more like we get to unpack the energetics of the last 2 weeks for the next 6 months. And I'll share some quotes about what I did a little bit of research about native understandings of eclipses. And so some of it's very, people were scared of them sometimes, and some of it's very fortuitous. But before we get there, I think I did some research this week, and you guys just confirmed that I've successfully made the audio such that we can do the meditation and actually hear the bowls. So let's go ahead and jump right in with that. I lit a candle right at the peak of the eclipse, so that's going to be burning with us as we open with a bit of a meditation. So let's go ahead and just take a second to come into your body. Come into your body. Maybe close your eyes to help you with that. You can turn your camera off if you want. I think, as far as I know, no one's going to see you guys anyway because the camera's focused on me. So you're just going to find a straight spine. It's best in your own experience of your body. Feel your shoulders sit over your hips. Let this be comfortable. Close your eyes and find your breath. And just notice how you're breathing at this moment. No judgment. That's part of the theme for this eclipse. No self-judgment. Maybe you are breathing a little bit shallow. Maybe it's a little bit of a stressful week. That's fine. Maybe you can start to deepen the inhale and lengthen the exhale. And as you do that, start to feel your heartbeat and your thoughts respond to that slower breath. The slower breath is signaling time to slow down. And I've mentioned before that I've done some research to learn that babies come into this earth with that deep belly breathing. 80 to 90% of adults don't do it. So there's something really primordial about just breathing and just breathing deeply and just being present. So we're at full moon during the gathering. Lunar eclipses always happen at full moons. We set some intentions with the new moon, with the previous eclipse 2 weeks ago. So take a second, if you did have any intentions for that new moon, take a second to reflect on those intentions, or you might just reflect on today, what's coming to the surface. That's the energetics of full moons, realizations. The dark things at night can be seen by the light of the moon. So what's coming to the surface, and also what isn't coming to the surface? And the full moon is just a time to, Scorpio full moons especially, to go inside, to dig a little deeper, to let your thoughts and your feelings and your intuitions speak with you about those intentions, about any realizations. But as I mentioned, this is a non-judgmental space. There isn't any rush to have anything manifest per se. We're remembering that everything always unfolds perfectly. But it's just to observe what's present for you right now, what's present for you during this eclipse. So I mentioned that I lit a candle, a blue candle, when the eclipse started. That's going to be going. And I'm going to um, send us into a little bit more of a deeper space. If you're just hopping on, we're breathing in through our nose and we're breathing out through the mouth. And I've got three bowls that I would like to play for you. These are tuned to 432 hertz. This first bowl is connected to our power center. It's going to help us cleanse the solar plexus. This is where we bring things into life, where we take action. So crystal bowls are understood. Tibetan bowls are sort of the metal bowls to release the heavy energies. Crystal bowls bring in the higher vibration. So imagine that you're receiving a cleansing and an upgrade and just new information during this eclipse about your power center, your ability to create everything that you want in your life. Eyes still closed, still breathing. We're going to move up to the heart center, the power spot of our body. So imagine that these vibrations are traveling into you, and focus your attention right on your heart and just let it be an upgrade, a healing, new information. Eyes still closed. We're going to move up to the third eye. Focus on that space in the middle of your head, right between your brows. So Sirius is very active during this eclipse. So just allow this sound to enter into your third eye and to be healing, uplifting, upgrading. So still sitting with a straight spine, eyes closed. We started this meditation considering what the new moon intentions were, or what, if there weren't any specific intentions, what's coming up today, now, or what's not coming up, what's status. So now revisit that. And one of the themes is no judgment.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
No
Wow.
judgment. No judgment, so that you can remember that you have the power to transform and to let the if there are any disappointments, if there are any frustrations, if this isn't all butterflies, or if it is, celebrate that. But whatever the emotion is the the inner knowings, the fire that creates the change, the fire that creates the alchemy, the fire that continues on the journey. And maybe this has been a little bit of a challenging time. Maybe it hasn't, but likely with the energies of a Scorpio eclipse, Scorpio is inviting us to go deeper to things that we haven't yet realized. That is the nature of the energetics of that sign. So, our task during this full moon is to be at one with that, to simply be with it. Much like with any kind of psychological counseling, accepting it or just letting it be is the only thing that there is to do. And with the energetics of the sound, the crystal bowls that we just experienced, the idea of these downloads coming through, that our current mental state might not be able to truly comprehend what it is that we're even doing. So to kind of reach a state of humility with that, or grace is the word that came to mind for me personally. So again, just for a few moments, any strong feelings, let themselves be known. Any realizations for each unique individuals during this eclipse. Full moon realization with an exclamation point for an eclipse, extra exclamation point for in the sign of Scorpio. Squaring, or not squaring, trine and sextile Sirius. And with that, we're just going to kind of slowly come back to this gathering. And we're going to get into some content, but we're just going to take a second. I invite you to take a moment to notice how you're feeling and to let all of it be potentially perfect, even if it's not what the mental linear mind wants to be happening, to unpack it and to realize that it's all always perfect. And take a deep breath into that now. See if you can take a few more breaths with this new space that you've found. Potentially a sense of simply being on the path and accepting whatever it is that is coming up to be seen and released, seen and accepted, seen and acknowledged. Nothing to do, just let your consciousness be the thing that does. So I forgot, for those of you that started with me at the beginning, to share the slide for the meditation, but you can see it now. And I mentioned this during the meditation. The message is you have the power to transform, period. And the emotions, things we think of as emotions, things that have the charge, Scorpio is really good at that. The inner knowings, that's the fire that creates the change. I call it alchemy came through. So we're going to move, because there's a fair amount to share with Egypt and Syria. So I'm going to kind of just jump right into that. And one of the things that is continuing to be released is this notion of linear time being all there is, just like the physical world being all there is. And Egyptians knew of time as a cycle. This is a picture of the Hindu Yuga cycle, also known as the Great Year. And it shows the cycle of time. So 12 o'clock is the peak energy, and we move down to 6 o'clock. And I'll get to that a little bit more. Well, let me go ahead and share this next slide. So here, the cycles of time are the energetics the positionings of the planets that each have their own vibration or intelligence are informing everything. So certain times, the bottom of this would be very dark times. As we're kind of on the swing of this. We're about at 8 o'clock on the clock face. And one of the things, and I also want to mention that many cultures knew of cycles of time. This is a snapshot from the Egyptian alchemy course, where it's an alchemical. They thought of time as in packets, and the packets, every minute of the day wasn't always 60 seconds. Sometimes it was, depending on how much light there was in the sky. They were only equal amounts when it was the equinoxes, right? Equal light, equal dark. But the packets would be of different sizes and would have different energetic signatures according to which planet ruled the day, and then the day, and how many minutes per packet of time. I'm not going to get into that, but I wanted to share a couple ideas about different understandings of the notion that I've spoken of before. This is the same that you'll see the Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. This is the same. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara, and Kali are the same things. This is another version of the Hindu Yuga cycles, and you can see here that they're a little bit over 25,000 years per cycle. There's two stars in this image. The first one in the middle is not our sun, it's Sirius. And you can't see it here, but Sirius and our sun actually have a binary elliptical relationship. So this is actually only showing this. The sun is the little star that's in Dwapara 2 at the top of the circle. This is the sun's orbit. Sirius has its own orbit, but this is important to show that you can see that the sun and Sirius get closer and farther to each other. And we're at the point where the closer the sun and Sirius get, the more downloads come through. The lighter the culture is, the lighter humanity is, the lighter the energetics are, the more things can be accomplished. So we're on this upswing. And I wanted to also share this interesting image. And I don't quite want to say that I agree with 100% of what is being shared here, but this is a Hindu yogi's explanation of the Yuga cycles. This is the same wheel of time. He's labeled it. So what's interesting here is if we look at the Dwapara cycle, he places Old Kingdom in Egypt a little further up than we are now. He places us, he says present is, it's more like 7 o'clock on the clock face when he did this. So we have Old Kingdom of Egypt a little bit further on. We also have some interesting things happening at this. So if we look at the same distance from Kali and Dwapara, we have Moses, Solomon, the rise of Greece and Homer, the Kingdom Egypt. So we have this notion that we're headed into these energetic times where it's going to be easier to understand. I call it in the Egyptian alchemy course, easier to understand the esoteric knowledge that makes no sense to us 10 years ago because we weren't ready to receive it. It was just gibberish. Didn't make, but now as the energetics are shifting, more light's coming in, enlightenment in some sense, we're going to be able to understand those things that people talked about on this side of the cycle, but we couldn't understand them until now. The energies just simply weren't there. I'm going to lightly link that to Egypt and say that Egyptians we'll do a meditation in the Great Pyramid at the end of this gathering. But Egyptians built a lot of their structures in relationship to the star Sirius. They had a god and a goddess that were Orion and Sirius. They also had these myths that connected Isis and Osiris to these Orion and Sirius. So they spent a lot of time and invested a fair amount of energy and put these two things pretty high up in their culture, as we would call it today. I sense that when we look at this cycles of time, we can understand that they were receiving information that was coming through, and they were interacting with it, and that's what helped them create the advanced civilization that they have. I want to next share, and then I'm going to need to shift my sound back to normal. But I want to share a video from a gentleman. His name is Hakim. He is somebody who the two teachers that I've learned from Egypt about, both randomly mentioned this guy as a very important, the one who was, he's now crossed over, but he was the one who kind of held the knowledge. And he was actually from a matrilineal line of Kemetians, is what they call it, Kemetic information, but there were no daughters, so he took on the lineage. So we're going to watch a 4-minute snippet of him talking about Egyptian understandings of time. Well, he's Egyptian, but it's I find it very, very interesting. So let's go ahead and start this share. Bear with me for a second. As I mentioned, I'm trying to get the sound recording better for you guys, so hopefully this will work. Okay.
That is true. It's not one tunnel, it's...
So the question is, let's back up. Is it true that there's a tunnel system underneath the pyramids? He's going to start to answer that question and then get into the thing that is relevant.
That is true. It's not one tunnel, it's a net of tunnels covering the whole area.
People could walk from there for quite some distance.
Yeah. The oldest tunnel has been known is what located between Dashur south and Abrawash north. And this is the land of Osiris. And I think it's the oldest, they're using the time lineage, which I don't believe in time. We as Sesh, as a people, we have 360 senses. What is recognized today is 5. The senses of to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, so touch, and so on. So when you said this, I will take you to a healthy Sesh, full capacity. You know instruments to know the straight line.
All right. I didn't want to take up too much of our time with that. In the 4th cycle of the Egyptian alchemy course, we kind of dive a little bit deeper into what he has to say, but essentially he was commissioned by some Egyptian people to write a book to download all these 360 senses, and he believes that time is not linear. He says it multiple times, and I think there's many levels of unpacking of that. But one of the things that he says is that I'm not going to tell you, you're in a limited state of consciousness right now. I want me to name for you what are the other 355 senses so that you can understand them. And that's not the way it's coming through. It's inside. He talks about how it's an inner knowing. And I find the two parallels between nonlinear time and the multiple senses. We all kind of understand third eye opening is one of the things we call it, but this idea that we do know more than these 5 senses in this physical world. But he's saying that it's not to be documented or understood with where we are today, because where we are today is simply a product of everything that we've just come out of. And when we think about the linear cycles of time, we've just been through some really dark times. So we don't necessarily have the capacity to write a book on it and have it be that book is 100% accurate. Another thing that I mentioned that's happening is that a lot of the ways that we're used to connecting to the astral or connecting are kind of being shut down because they're being activated again. And this is part of what I believe to be the role of Sirius being so active during this eclipse. I'm going to get back to my slides, and I hope that I have the right slide up. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to get back to, bear with me, thank you. Oh, I have to actually I have to take the volume to a different space. Let me just switch the audio settings back to what Zoom normally has so that there's not a bunch of noise. And then here we go. And then we'll continue on. Oh, this would be a good time for me to say, does anybody have any comments on this? Does anybody have anything they want to share while I get the next thing set up? No is okay. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to shift gears to considering the role of Sirius with this eclipse, also considering a deeper understanding of what an eclipse means. So we've gathered in previous years on equinoxes and solstices to realize that the megalithic structures that we don't know how they were built are aligned with the solstices and the equinoxes. There's also some mystery around how in past times, if they were so unscientific and unenlightened, were they able to understand all this eclipse stuff? And depending on the culture, there was a group of people in charge, astrologers, priests, whoever they were, the specific people who read the sky and knew nonlinear time and could predict these events because they felt like they were pretty important. So I did a little bit of digging, specifically with the National Museum of the American Indian, national being the United States. I know there's folks from around the world here. The Smithsonian Institution, and also there's the Institute for Diné Culture of Philosophy and Government. Diné is, well, we'll get to what that means in a second. So these are responses in this lifetime of different tribes answering the question of whether or not their tribe has any beliefs or sort of practices in around an eclipse. So we can also consider when we read these things that they were probably reacting potentially. I'm not sure about this. This might be an eclipse that they could see with their eyes, so it was super relevant. Or maybe it was something that they understood. I don't actually know whether or not these questions are responding to the global gathering that we have, but it's going to point to some things. So the Laguna Acoma Pueblo tribe, in parentheses, is where this person is located when they're living. This person is living in New Mexico. My Chicoan and Mesa Verde ancestors were astronomers. They marked Halley's Comet. We watched the sun, and we predicted eclipses. The sun dagger at Chaco Canyon is a prime example of the science of my Puebloan ancestors. I asked my elders recently of any taboos with eclipses. I was told they are a time of transformation and not to fear them. Those in our tribe who feel fear have done something wrong. They told me to pray with cornmeal, respect the silence, and accept the transformation coming. The Shawnee tribe, this person is in Kansas. I shared this in my email, this particular quote. Our prophet, Tenskwatawa, predicted a solar eclipse leading up to the War of 1812. He predicted this to William Henry Harrison, who dared Tenskwatawa to predict the future. He did, and tribes came from all over to hear our prophet speak. Hopi tribe in Arizona. I am Hopi Sun Clan. We pray to our Dwa every morning during the last eclipse. Our nieces and nephews are given their sacred Hopi names: Red Beautiful Sun, New Colorful Sun, Little Sun Boy. It is very significant to us, a time for ceremony. The Kiowa tribe in Oklahoma. The sun and moon played an important part in our yearly cycle. I seem to recall hearing where a full eclipse happened. All of a sudden, some got scared and just prayed. Taos Pueblo, this person's in New Mexico. We are told to stay inside and keep babies away from windows, to be mindful. We have to wear something sharp. The Nakota tribe, this person's in Alberta. Our elders have said that any meteor and lunar activity are omens signifying events that will come to pass. Rings around the sun and moon may indicate significant weather change. Lunar and sun eclipses have deeper representations. Their activity represents some natural occurrence to happen on Earth. Ho-Chunk in Wisconsin, I was told to respect both sun and moon eclipses. Time of transformation. And finally, Crow tribe in Montana, we believe it's a new beginning. The sun dies and is rejuvenated. So the Dene Institute, Dene is their name for their tribe, which we call Navajo. This institute got so many questions about this. They have a canned response that I would like, not canned. They have so many questions. They prepared a formal response to the public so that they have something official to say. And I wanted to share that with us next. It's a little bit lengthy, so I didn't write it up. Our Dene people have a completely different definition. This is the beginning of the quote. Our Dene people have a completely different definition and perspective on this sacred natural phenomenon. The belief is that the sun is the male and the moon is the female. The sun is the most powerful deity amongst all creation here on earth and in the universe. The sun is the epicenter of all creation. Nothing will live or function without the sun. The sun controls and regulates the universe, whereas the moon controls and regulates the earth. The sun is vested with the concept of and in control of death, and the moon is vested with and in control of birthing. When a solar or lunar eclipse occurs, it is believed that death occurs. That is the reason why an eclipse is termed either a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. A death is a very sacred occurrence. There are certain necessary protocols, but most important is a strict and comprehensive reverence in observing the occurrence of death. During a solar or lunar eclipse, strict and comprehensive acts of reverence must be carried out. In addition to the concept of death during an eclipse, it's also believed that during an eclipse, sun and moon are mating. After the passing of the eclipse, when the sun or moon becomes fully bright once again, it is believed that a birthing has just taken place. It is believed that the mating is to give birth to or renew the universe and all creation. During this birthing renewal process, the universe and all of creation are reborn, realigned, and there is growth and development amongst all of creation as well. Due to the very sacredness of death and birth, the reverence required to be shown during an eclipse is very strict and comprehensive. There is only one way to be reverent during an eclipse. No shortcuts exist. We cannot simply smudge ashes or corn pollen upon ourselves and exit our homes and carry on if it was just another day. The following acts of reverence must be carried out during an eclipse. We must stay inside, preferably in our home. We cannot eat or drink anything. We cannot be asleep. We cannot brush or comb our hair or wash ourselves. We cannot be in an intimate act with our spouse or anyone of the opposite sex. We cannot needlessly move around. We're required to remain calm and still. Cannot look outside, cannot look at the sun while the eclipse is occurring. Yes, this also means the shadow of the sun through a pinhole or other apparatuses. And we cannot be using the restroom. During the eclipse, we must be in full prayer and reverence. Prayers must be focused on the concept of the sun or moon going through an ending, and we are to pray about the ending of bad or evil or the ending of phases of life. In addition, our prayers must be focused on the birth and renewal that will arrive when the eclipse ends. Moreover, prayers must be about a better future. Most of the time, we pray for and about ourselves and loved ones. It is advocated that prayers during an eclipse must mostly be about this creation, the ending, renewal, and future of this creation and the divine presence. If we know the songs for use during eclipses, those songs can be sung at this time. Moreover, during the eclipse, we must always look down at the ground, cannot be looking up or outside. The animals, the insects, the birds will not be active during the eclipse. The birds will not fly. The insects will hibernate. Horses and dogs will be calm and look at the ground. When the eclipse ends, we will end our prayer and say Hojo Naha Ji. I'm not sure I pronounced that right, 4 times. At that time, we must take our corn pollen out and use it as an offering to acknowledge our prayer and to acknowledge the sacred phenomenon. The corn pollen will be the first meal taken after the eclipse, just as corn pollen is the first food eaten in a new period of life. We will feel the renewal of life, the rejuvenation of life, the feeling of going on, and a positive outlook of the future. It is tremendously amazing how our people knew when the eclipses were going to happen through their prayers, songs, and belief systems without technology. Today, we have to rely on the media to inform us when these eclipses are going to take place. Our prayers and songs are very powerful. Our traditional Dene teachings instruct us that if a person does not observe the eclipse in accordance with the cultural protocols that have been outlined here, the non-observer will certainly develop eye problems. Unexplained sunburns or rashes will develop, digestive problems and unexplained migraine headaches will develop. The Dene Institute is merely sharing our sacred and still reverent cultural teachings. An individual always has a choice to observe or not to observe the eclipse. We hope that our brief synopsis has clarified, reaffirmed, or educated our readers about the upcoming eclipse. On behalf of all our residents, we thank you for your understanding and encourage you to keep your protocols alive and sacred during the upcoming eclipse. So that's an interesting confirmation for us that something powerful is going on. That's why I wanted to do that, or I think my spirit led me to do that, because we have people alive on our planet that can talk about what their cultures and ancestors knew about these sacred times, which is why we're gathered today. So thank you all for being a part of this gathering. I wanted to next move, well, I'm going to stop for a second. Does anybody, before we shift gears into the astrological aspects, anybody have anything they want to share? Okay, well, we'll just move along. This is the chart for the eclipse. So Luna is in Scorpio, down at about 5 o'clock, 14 degrees, 58 minutes of Scorpio. So down here. So this chart is showing intensity. Scorpio is an intense sign in and of itself. Luna in an eclipse in Scorpio, a lunar eclipse is its own super intense energy. Combined with Scorpio is likely going to have us feel some type of intensity. That being said, time is not linear, and we have around 6 months of lunar cycles to unpack what might be beneath the surface. So it's not necessarily going to be that we have the aha during the eclipse, during this gathering, it's all clear. That's us. That's kind of old world, old energy world, us. New energy world, us, is, I've got 6 cycles to be open to this intensity and to allow this intensity to be supportive of transformation. Ultimately, that's what this is about. So the idea, as I mentioned before, is things beneath the surface, things we haven't seen, things we haven't wanted to see, things we were simply unaware of. Could also be the idea of mystery, mysteries revealed. That's one of the, I didn't realize that I'd be teaching this Egyptian alchemy course twice, but that was the whole motivation of that course, was to support myself and everyone who's there in working with the information and mysteries. And so as it is a full moon and an eclipse, the idea is that we're going to have realizations, but we're also going to have things coming up for release, things coming up for realization so as to be released. So at any full moon and during an eclipse, the sun and moon are opposite. So the sun is up here in Taurus. And I mentioned, I didn't put it in this chart, but Sirius is also over here at 13 degrees Cancer, positively aspecting the sun and the moon, trine and sextile. So that means that the information is, so the opposition, and I talked about this in the podcast, the opposition is one that supports these things in either being present or we really get to see what's blocking. Sirius is helping us during this eclipse have it be an easy flow of information. Have it be that we don't have to be afraid of Scorpio and what's beneath the surface and death, these things that our culture is still pretty afraid of. But what's more interesting that I wanted to touch on here is we have Venus. Venus is in Gemini, and it's sextile Jupiter, trine Saturn, square Neptune. So Venus is in Gemini. Here's Jupiter. Here's Saturn. So the same sextile trine thing. Sextiles and trines are just the degree separation of the planets, and they're thought when they're at certain degrees, they're either having some friction or they're having some ease in being together. So Venus is also in Jupiter expansion. Saturn is not as karma and limitations, but Saturn's really just, so Venus is going to help us with trine Jupiter is going to help us have these kind of big romantic realizations, but the romance is really about what's possible for our future, I sense. But then we have Saturn also saying like, hey, don't get too outlandish. We need to ground this down into 3D. So it's kind of a perfect mix for where we're at, being these beings that are just learning to walk around in our human suits, so to speak. So this energy is also square Neptune in Pisces. So Neptune in Pisces is, well, Neptune is also the planet of illusion and delusion, which is why this is perfect. So that's Neptune rules Pisces. Neptune is a psychic intuitive sign. Illusion, delusion is pretty okay with Scorpio energy. It could be the things beneath the surface. So this is perfect for this eclipse because it's helping to smooth out any realizations that come through, helping it to be, Venus is active, Jupiter and Saturn are very active, and Neptune's supporting the Sirian and Scorpionic energies in being present. So this just means that this is a big, intense eclipse. And I offer that one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, how can we look and truly see? Where are we? What have we looked at, but we might not want to deal with? What if we kind of said, all right, I'll deal with that later energetically? This eclipse might bring it up. I'll give you an example. I recently got another new big, large livestock guardian dog. She's a rescue. 3 months ago, I felt something on her side and it looked like a little bump and I knew I needed to take care of it. You know what just came to the surface literally from beneath her yesterday? She had to go have the operation. I knew about it. It was on my list. This is a very 3D example of this, but I'm sharing it so that you can kind of get that this can be in our emotional world and our psychological world, but it can also be in our physical world. That came up and I knew about it and I was going to handle it, quite honestly. I actually had an appointment for next week to go handle it, but it was just like the eclipse was like, nope, right now. So that's the kind of thing where are we, deluding is a strong word, but how can we look and truly see? How can we look with our connected, secure, trusting ourselves, trusting the universe eyes, no fear? Because sometimes when we look at things that we don't want to see, my fear was, oh my God, what if it's something I don't want to find? I should just push it off. Well, and I also knew eventually I would handle it. And I did handle it, and she's well. But that's kind of the overarching, another overarching energetic theme of this eclipse. I also wanted to share, while we're looking at this chart, we have Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, is square. Mars is in Cancer. So Mars is at 21 degrees of Cancer right here. Mars, ruler of Scorpio, is in Cancer, square to Chiron. Chiron in Aries, I mentioned the energetics of that in the podcast, is kind of helping us to get up and over a little bit of our woundedness. And here, this aspect is helping us to turn any kind of victim mentality, any kind of helpless energy into empowered energy. So to continue my story, it might have been, and I took my dog to the veterinarian, and he had all a host of things that he said could be possible and we could do. And my task was to keep the animal next to me in mind, and to say yes and no and yes and no to that veterinarian, and to talk to him and to ask questions, and to not just simply say, you handle it, to be present in that process, even though that was a very challenging time for me and the dog. So kind of a mundane example, but the idea is we're not helpless. We know that. And it's very easy to create a story of the why. The 3D world has lots of different reasons to turn helpless, but what's coming through is an upgrade for our oneness, but our own inner power, the empowered energy. And this is the real idea of new eyes, seeing ourselves with new eyes, seeing ourselves as capable of anything, and really meeting some of the limiting beliefs that we might be holding about the way we are, the way things are. So the final thing I wanted to mention here about this chart is, and I've mentioned this in previous broadcasts, Pluto's over here at 0 degrees Aquarius. That's a big deal because Pluto's going to be here. It's going to pop back into Capricorn for a little bit, and we're going to have a dance for almost 2 years of that. But then it's going to move into Aquarius and stay in Aquarius. But right now, during this eclipse, Pluto is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, square to Jupiter in Aries. So Jupiter in Aries, expansion, Aries, drive, motivation, energy to lean in when, quite frankly, and this is what I love, because this is going to help us get up and over the victim helpless mentality. The thing that we tell ourselves is, I still don't have any evidence in the physical world. What am I even doing? I don't know if I believe in this stuff. I'm sharing one energetic version of that. But Pluto in Aquarius square to Jupiter in Aries is going to give us whatever chutzpah it is, whatever extra gas, whatever. Aries is drive, Aries is go, Aries is you can do this. And we get to say to ourselves, it's okay, self, I don't have any evidence, nothing to show for it yet, but you know what? I'm going to keep at this. And to be willing to be in the process of the transformation. I'll talk in the future in a broadcast about how I do believe that this is the birthing time. We've been in this, we're going to get reborn soon. I've said that a lot. I think we're really kind of starting to see the birthing time right now, but this eclipse is a pivotal time. And also, it's okay if there's not anything happening at 10:33 a.m. Pacific time, or the eclipse is lasting. It's a little bit of a longer eclipse. It's lasting a few hours. If nothing comes through right during this time, trust energetically it came through, and it'll come through to you when it's meant to be. So I wanted to see if anybody has any questions about that. The final thing, we're clipping along at a nice speed. The final thing is our meditation that we're going to be doing in Egypt. But does anybody have any questions or anything they want to share about the astrology or anything?
I thought the DNA reading was very interesting and revealing. They're apparently a part of the Navajo Nation.
Yeah, it's very, I think it's a good time to be remembering the people that, well, for me, where I'm living in North America, these are the people that were living here since way before anybody else arrived. And so it's interesting to be going back to, what did they know? And what do they still know? Because they know some things. In the Egyptian alchemy course, I talk about how the different religions have preserved some things, and certain cultures have preserved information, certain cultures haven't. But to go back to the time before skyscrapers and cell phones, and that being the god to people of the earth. So thank you, Richard, for sharing. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Okay. Let's go ahead and move right along. Let me get my final, let me get back to my screen share here. And we'll get to meditation. This is a photo of the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. And I mentioned in the podcast that there's the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. They've discovered with little robotic toy cars with cameras strapped to them that there's shafts that go out from both of these chambers, two apiece, and lead to the outer parts of the chamber where I'm not sure, I've never been, and this is hearsay from people that I feel like I trust, that they're connected. You can see at certain points of time a very specific astral body. King's Chamber, Sirius. One of the shops, there's one of two aligns with that. And it's said that this is a burial chamber. It's also been shown, one of my sound healing teachers, that he developed, I think he developed a simoscope. He uses a simoscope. Simoscope is this instrument where it's like almost you put sand on a plate and then you play a note and it will create like this sacred geometric pattern. He took his simoscope into that sarcophagus and played different sounds, and he found that different tones created hieroglyphs. I'm only sharing that because it points us it helps us lean into the fact that that might not be a burial tomb, and maybe open up to the idea, as I mentioned in the podcast, that that will be a place for downloads to come through. So one of my teachers about Egypt has said that a high priest or priestess at a certain time would lay in that sarcophagus and receive the downloads from the energies from the stars that are aligned at certain points coming through, directed at that particular, I think it's red sandstone, I forget, that's what the stone is made of, and would potentially communicate that to the initiates if it was a high priest or priestess training other people to be of service to the community. So that's what we're going to be doing for this astral journey during this time. Let's go ahead and head into that space. So sort of like the first meditation that we started with, let's close our eyes, find a straight spine, and find the breath. There are particular types of breathing that you could do for this practice, but I want to keep it really simple and accessible. So we're just simply going to be breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. And let the exhale be, during this time of realization, anything that's ready to go can go, including the old air. And let the inhale be fresh air, new information, new energy. And then as you breathe, start to think of and experience the breath itself as a cycle. Every inhale is followed by an exhale. Every exhale is followed by an inhale. So here you are, you're in the gathering live, or wherever you find this recording, seated or lying, wherever you're seated or lying, in whatever building or place or natural space you're at, and just come present to you right now. And for this journey, I would like you to consider the idea of one of the birds sacred to the Egyptian culture is the ibis. It's a little bit like a crane. That an ibis comes to you, a bird with a long neck, sort of gray feathers, long feet, that lives in the Nile. It's coming to invite you to hop on its back, however it wants to transport you to Egypt. So you can do that, or you can just imagine and visualize that you're on the banks of the Nile, which is where this ibis deposits you. The Nile is active, the water is flowing, the papyrus reeds are around you. There are other ibis birds there, and there's this pathway from where the ibis has set you down. It's a pathway up to the Great Pyramid. And for this journey, you can imagine that you're in Egypt at a time where in the 3D world, the culture is alive and thriving. So there's people dressed in light colored robes. There's big, luscious fruit trees. There's fountains and statues. And there's sort of a hubbub going on because everyone's preparing for this event, this eclipse. So you're being guided now. The ibis in Egyptian culture is synonymous with the god Thoth. So imagine that there's an Egyptian high priest, god, guiding you into the Great Pyramid through all this markets and hubbub about ceremonial preparations. You're being guided inside the Great Pyramid. So all of a sudden, as you enter, first you're guided through something like a hypostyle hall with the big columns, and there's still a lot of energy. It's starting to feel very sacred here. You turn around a corner and you enter into the pyramid, and all of a sudden, all that hubbub, all that excitement is met with just this vast silence. And it's as if you're being invited to shift your focus from the external world of the outside to the internal world of the inside of the energy. So as you're standing inside this pyramid, inside first or whatever chamber room is the first room, you can hear a pin drop energetically. Feel the silence and feel that the room feels your vibration. Up on either side in front of the next doorway, there's two little mini sphinxes that are sort of reading you, gauging you, considering your energy, and you're being scanned and being invited to pass through that hall. And Thoth, or whatever Egyptian emissary, is going to take you, is going to lead you through a series of hallways and passageways and stairways. That journey itself in linear time probably takes about 45 minutes. We're just going to invite you to arrive inside the king's chamber. And the emissary is letting you know it's going to wait for you. Thoth is going to wait for you right outside that door. So you walk in and you're standing with the group of people, and there is a person laying down inside this sarcophagus. And it's, as I mentioned, we're awaiting a very fortuitous time where Sirius is aligning with one of those star shafts. And the Egyptians understood Sirius to be the central sun to our sun, informing the sun that does bring all life to this planet. But Sirius bringing information and life to the sun. So this was a big deal. And you're intuitively doing whatever it is you know you need to do. Maybe you're just imagining yourself getting comfortable and sitting down. Maybe you know you're supposed to stand and watch. Maybe you know you're supposed to lie and listen. Allow yourself on this journey to get comfortable and to prepare to receive. So time passes while you're here in a very non-linear way. It's as if the silence is simultaneously forever and no time at all. And at some juncture, the person laying in the sarcophagus, Sirius aligns. The energy comes down into that sarcophagus, and the person starts speaking or toning or intoning. As I mentioned, that sarcophagus has been documented as a sound device. So some of what they're speaking might not be English per se. In the modern world, we tend to call it light language, but just allow yourself to receive whatever tones and energetics that person receiving the information from Sirius is sharing it with everyone in this room, and you are there, you are seated. Something about potentially you being connected to and from that star or aligned with that star. Allow yourself to receive. Allow yourself to receive whatever energies are coming through. And I'm going to play for that time the third eye healing bowl one more time. So at some juncture, Sirius moves beyond that star shaft. The person in that sarcophagus sits up, stands up, wakes up. And you are invited to spend as much time in that chamber as you'd like. Also knowing that your emissary, potentially the ibis or Thoth, is waiting for you right outside that chamber. So when you're ready, you can get up, stand up, walk out. Maybe you want to take some time to just prepare to take with you whatever downloads came through, whatever energies were transmitted beyond the language that we speak today. I offer this, part of this is energies of oneness, energies of unity consciousness, energies of interconnectedness with everyone and everywhere. That is part of the message of Sirius. And then when you're ready, you can head back out just the way you came, just the way that Thoth guided you, down the stairs, through the hallway, through the passageway, back through the doorway with the two sphinxes, back into the entry gallery of the pyramid. There's still a pin drop of, you could hear so much silence, but so much energy. You can hear the energy. And you're preparing to head back outside into the physical world. So take a moment to just receive and absorb, and to yourself say something akin to amen or so it is. And then back out into the hustle and bustle of that huge hypostyle hall with the big columns. Everyone's bustling around. It's a big day. Back down to the river. Back to the ibis, who's going to alight and take you back to precisely where you're practicing this meditation. And so now come back into your body. Come back into the here and now. And notice how you feel. Notice how you're vibrating. It might be a thought or an emotion, but it's subtle energy is more of a vibration. And for me, it's a really neat way to understand how eclipses can be these sort of cuspy 6-month long unpacking journeys. If the language is beyond what we know, then we get to understand on some higher level that we've received something that's already with us. We're vibrating like that right now, and that is us. And so for the next 6 months of time, we're going to be moving through our reality with this new vibration. The realizations are bound to happen. Realizations about what's beneath the surface. How can we embrace the process of transformation? What can we shift? What can we let go? How can we accept so as to continue on the journey? And with that, I'll invite you to come back to our gathering. It will likely, I don't expect anybody to jump in and share after that, but I wanted to open up and offer the opportunity for anyone to do so if there's anything that you would like to share. It'd be a wonderful time.
Yes, I would like to share that. Hi, I would like to share that the energies of today are very intense for me, and they were very intense before this meeting, and now the serious energy is really getting me. And during this meditation, I felt very strongly in my solar plexus. Maybe now I should call it Sirius plexus, because I could feel really something very potent going on. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for sharing. You know, there's the bowls, the plexus, the heart, and the third eye. There is something about our empowerment and power. But even what's coming through, the words that we use, that's what one of the things that Hakeem has said in another video is that he doesn't want to use the words that we use today because the words are too limiting. Power, the word power has got all this interesting stuff in the collective, but it is this manifestation center. I like that you call it the Sirius center. That's fantastic. KK says, there was a hummingbird here when I opened my eyes. Ah, I love it. I love it. There's so many things that are coming to mind for me to share. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? I'm not going to share too much more. I think we've caught a nice thing, but anybody else want to share? Thank you, Kasia.
Could you say more about that fairly large room. That was in a pyramid. I sort of somehow missed that a bit. Can you say it a little
Oh
bit?
gosh. Yeah, thank you. I should have added a diagram. I feel like sometimes I feel like I've said, if I've already said it 3 times, I don't want to be boring, but then I realize not everybody's in my head all the time. So inside the Great Pyramid, if I could, I don't have it pulled up, but there's two chambers. So there's the Great Pyramid, and the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber sit here. And then from those two, and they're probably about, as that photo shows, they're probably about like 15 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet, as I think something like the dimensions of how big that room is. But it's, we think of it as like stacked solid stones, but there are these little, and from what I've understood from people that one of the women that I've learned from, it's kind of a journey to get there. There are some staircases and small little places where you're crouched and you're like crawling through the pyramid. Other places are open, but there are these ways that you could walk to get to this room. And in relatively recent time, they've taken these little robotic cars with cameras on them and documented that there are within each King's and Queen's chamber, as we call them today, there are 2 shafts that go out. Okay. Thank you. Jackie has something for me to share, so that while I talk about this, I'm going to share it. Just a second. Let me see if I can get this. There are 2 shafts. These shafts here. Let me share my screen. Thank you, Jackie, for helping me out. Okay, got it. Here's how it might look. Here's how it does look. Here's what they've documented. So you can see the Queen's Chamber below, the King's Chamber above, and those 2 little lines that go out. Boop. Those are those are lines that you can apparently see out. I don't know, because I've never been there in this lifetime, and I apologize that now there's an advertisement coming up on this screen. But you can see that they're aligned, and what they found is that they're aligned. Every shaft is aligned with a different celestial body. One of them is Sirius in the King's Chamber. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess.
Yeah. There's a lot to. Jackie?
Sorry, also I can come on video. I had one interesting thing. Funny enough, the reason I linked that article was because when that article came out the night before, I had a dream about the pyramids, and I'm not like, I don't know much about Egypt. I'm not super into any of it. I wasn't at that point, but I had a dream that I was like traveling along like the base of the pyramid, and something like came out of the pyramid at me and not paralyzed me, but it was like very startling, and I couldn't move. And then I woke up. And it was just very jarring. I'd never had a dream quite like that. And then that morning, when I sat down at my laptop, there was this article that they had discovered a new little hidden chamber or something in the pyramid, which I just thought was very strange, because there isn't much news around Egypt typically making the headlines. And yeah, I don't know, since then, Egypt has been a little bit of a curiosity to me. And so just really interesting to hear about you talk about the King's Chamber and kind of your friend potentially seeing hieroglyphs using, what was the name of his machine? Or
It's called a cymascope, Cymascope. I took 2 courses with him, and he either developed this machine. They used it, like I said, it was first used to give physical structure to sound. So they would play, C at whatever thing, and there would be this whoop, this thing that would there would be this sacred geometric structure that would be created. And it's more like a plate of sand, or a plate of something very much like sand. And it would be responding to the vibrations and creating something. And so he took it in here and found that it made hieroglyphs. I'd never heard of that before until, but then also what you're saying reminds me, another one of my teachers about Egypt talks about how the Sphinx, she experiences that as a portal. You go and stand right in front of where the Sphinx is, and right where the heart is something that she's had the experience of either something coming out and enveloping her, but she said it felt very loving and like kind of pulling her in. So, and I've had another friend who sees higher dimensions confirm that that in some level the Egyptians haven't gone anywhere. They're just in a higher dimension. And if you can see it, they're there, which is interesting. I'm not sure. I mean, this is all an offering. Take whatever you want. I find it, as you said, it's a curiosity that feels very relevant and resonant for me. So thank you for sharing. That's fantastic. Anybody else? Okay, well, we're done a little early, but I'm just going to trust that is the right timing of it all. We don't need to spend 2 hours doing this. I think the eclipse is almost done at this juncture anyway. And thank you guys for joining. I will put a link. I'll upload it to YouTube within probably 48 hours. And then tomorrow, if there's any interest, the Egyptian Alchemy course does set sail at like noon or something. And it's going to be a group of the first course is already almost done. The second, it's a group of people that were kind of exploring the mysteries of the Emerald Tablets and Thoth and all these things, because I think that it's relevant to us now. So if it resonates with you, let me know. Otherwise, have a blessed eclipse. And regardless of all that, thank you guys for being here and creating a circle with me. I feel very honored to have your energy and your participation, and tons of love. All right.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.